Okay, the starter has been reinstalled. I've just completed an absolute nightmare extracting the old bolts. And for the record, I wanted to share some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't work. So, first off, penetrating lube and heat. I did use it. It's hard to tell if it actually makes a difference or not. It definitely didn't free it immediately, but I think it's easy to do and it definitely will not make it worse. So I'd say go for it. Give it a few heat cycles if you can. This to show you how messed up the bolts are. This is what was left of the bolts and threads when they finally came out. It looks like they were the OEM bolts. Absolutely destroyed, and I basically had to drill the whole thing out. So do not use extractors. Just don't. I thought that they'd be okay. As you can see, these two broke off. They just don't work. They break. And of the time I spent on this project, a good portion of it was trying to remove the extractor bits. These are useful. These are 8mm inside, 10mm outside copper bearings. I got them off Amazon for cheap. What they will do is help you center when you need to drill. So this is a new OEM bolt I got, but the amount of thread is not really that great because you probably will damage the threads. I wanted to do this without removing the engine. So I have just recently redone my whole engine, took it out, redid my bottom, reglassed everything, rebuilt my whole deck with Kusa and everything. So I didn't have the heart to take out the engine a second time. So what I did is I went with, you got to get one of these and get an extra one because I broke one of these. This is the one I was using. But this will allow you to get an impact driver in front of the engine, and then you can hold this part with your hand and reach under and get under there. You'll also need a mirror. You'll also want some masking tape to tape up the flywheel. So you want to tape off the whole entrance to the flywheel so none of the shavings get in there. Then what actually works is you use these to get a bit centered. You choose the size of bit, and these are left hand bits. So these are left hand cobalt bits with a hex shank. You need that. You need the hex shank to get in there, so you don't have to use a drill. Otherwise, there's really not enough clearance to get an actual drill under there. So you're going to have to use a right angle drill with an extension. When you're doing that, it's much better to use an impact driver than an actual drill, because a drill, when it catches, will just twist your arm off and go crazy. An impact driver, when it catches, it will just click and it will hammer at it, which actually might help move it, but at the very least, it won't grind your hand up. I tried it with a drill and it just twisted this thing like crazy. So you're going to want to use these. You can stick them in from the bottom to sort of line up the center of the hole. And then if you choose I think this is a 1/4 drill bit, it will slide in there. Actually, I think even the 15/64. So the 15/64 will fit. That will help you center. So that'll help you center the drill bit. And apologies for I'm not going to invest the time to make this any sort of professional video, but I just wanted to share my experience. So that'll help you get it centered. And then once you get it centered, you can go with a smaller drill bit to try to drill up the middle and use the mirror often to check how you're doing. You want to keep it separate and then just move to larger and larger drill bits. And basically, your plan is that you're going to drill out the vast majority of this bolt. If it starts to turn at any point, you're using left-hand drill bits, so there's always a chance that it will start to turn and it will come out. That's great. But your plan is basically going to be to drill out the bolt and try to keep centered. The more material you remove, the easier it is and the more likely it will to come out. So this eventually did come out. But as you can see, I had to remove an incredible amount of material, and I did end up damaging the threads. Now, I thought about doing a helicoil, but there's no way I'm going to do a helicoil under the engine, and I think that's why, like, the chance you will damage the threads is incredibly high. So I think that's why they say, like, most shops will say pull the engine, because you'll probably need to use a helicoil or some other type of advanced thread repair. What I decided to do is just sort of accept that the first bit of threads would be damaged. I used a tap to, so that the holes actually go quite a lot further. So this has maybe 3/4 of an inch of thread on it, right, which is what actually engages it. But the holes go quite a bit further up into the block. So what I decided to do is, rather than use a helicoil, I would just use a tap, and I followed the thread up. Once I finally got this out, I followed this up a little bit further, cleaned out and drilled and threaded the hole a little bit further into the block. And I was able to get like pretty far. And then I got, these are 6-inch, 3/8 16 coarse grade stainless steel bolts. So I went with 3/16 stainless. There's a lot of discussion. Should you use grade 5? Should you use grade 8s? I went with 3/16 stainless, and I used a bunch of what's it called? Graphite anti-seize to stop them from galling. And then what I did, I just got 6 inches. So these are the 2 extra I got. And I cut off what I didn't need, and I kind of measured how far they would go in. I marked them, and then I added the amount for the starter, and then I cut off just a little bit less than that, and then they threaded up pretty far in there. And that allowed me to do this without removing the engine. So, yeah, it's obviously the correct way to do it is to remove the engine, but if you really don't want to do that, this did actually work for me. It was an absolute nightmare. It took me about 3 or 4 days. I think if I had learned a lesson and skipped using the extractors, and I had all the tools initially, I started off with not having all these tools and not having the right angle drill bit. So I started off just regular drill bits and extractors. Absolute waste of time, and just cost me a bunch of time. And one thing is not shown. If you do try extractors and you do break off the bits, you're going to need to use, I used a Dremel with a carbide bit to grind out the broken extractors. That was a nightmare. So just skip the extractors altogether. I promise you they won't work. They push outwards, and they just jam the threads into the block, and it just doesn't come out. And you're so tempted to just apply a little bit more torque, and hopefully it'll come out, but it won't, and then you'll just have a broken extractor to deal with. And because these are hardened steel, they're a nightmare to get out. So yeah, if I had to do this over again, just use these to line up the hole, and just go at it with reverse left-handed cobalt drill bits with a hex shank. Just keep working, stay centered on the hole. Use the guides to center. If you get a little bit off center, you can use a Dremel with a very fine carbide bit to like widen yourself out on one side, and then you can recenter yourself. The other thing is, find yourself a good position to work. So I found I removed the battery and everything, and I removed all the engine cover. So I got myself where one foot goes like under the engine here, and the other foot goes right against the back, and that got me pretty good access there. So in all my years of boat projects, this was the most frustrating, but I did get it done, and I hope that this helps anyone do it as well. Also, my condolences. If you're watching this video because you're dealing with the same problem, my condolences. It's a nightmare, but there's at least a chance you can do it. This is a 4.3 Mercruiser in a C-Ray, which I'm currently doing a whole bunch of other work on. One of the reasons I really didn't want to pull the engine is I had already pulled it. I had rebuilt the entire subfloor, stringers, everything with like epoxy Kusa, and that had taken me like months. and I'd finally got the engine back in. Took it out for the first day in the water, and the starter bolt snapped. I don't think it was at all related to taking it out and putting back in, because nothing happened to the starter. It was just bad luck. But I just didn't have the heart to take it out again, because I don't really have the clearance to to do that. So I had to go and pull it up with a chain hoist under an overhead bridge. But yeah, anyways, hopefully that helps someone. It is possible. It will suck, but it is possible. Don't use extractors. Good luck.